Hello, how are you? I hope you're doing okay. Listen, I got a little test to take. It'll only take a couple of minutes, and it really involves you quite a bit because it's about your money. That stuff you work all week for. It's about your money and what it's all about and where it's going. So this is just a quick little test, fun test. Be honest. One of them is a yes or no question. There's only 4 of them. So let's see what you know. Now, everybody's heard about the Federal Reserve, right? Question number 1. Is the Federal Reserve a branch of the federal government? Yes or no? Question number 2. Every night on the news, you hear them talk about the budget and the deficit and the national debt. Let's focus on the national debt. America has a national debt of over $14 trillion right now. The question is, who owes that money? Who actually owes the $14 trillion? And the second part of the question is, who do we owe it to? Who collects the money? Question number 3. The $14 trillion deficit, or not deficit, but the national debt of $14 trillion, interest has to be paid on that money, just like the credit cards in your pocket. Presently, the interest rate on $14 trillion is about $1.2 trillion. Now, they get paid. They get paid their interest. You better believe it. The question is, who pays them? And the second part of the question is, where does that money come from? Where does that $1.2 trillion come from? It happens every year. And last but not least, question number 4. Our economy is run on paper money. What gives it its value? Is our money backed by gold and silver? Is that what it is? Okay, that's it. Now let's see how you did. Question number 1. Is the Federal Reserve a branch of the federal government? If you said yes, you would be wrong. Not only is it not a branch of the federal government, it has never been audited. There's no committee to oversee it, never has been. They are the ones that control our interest rates. They decide whether or not you buy a car or buy a home. They're actually called the World Bank. They go by several names. The World Bank, the National Bank, the State Bank, the Main Bank. Here in America, they call themselves the Federal Reserve, so you and I would naturally assume that they're part of the federal government. And it works because about 90% of the people I've ever spoken to think that the Federal Reserve is a branch of the federal government. Well, it isn't. Number 2, the national debt, $14 trillion. Who owes that money? You do. And I do. And the other 300 million Americans. The American public owes that $14 trillion. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't remember getting $14 trillion from them, or my parents, or my grandparents. In fact, I don't remember getting anything from them. Yet, we owe someone $14 trillion. The question is, who do we owe? Ready for this one? The Federal Reserve. Or should I say the World Bank? And oh yes, they collect that interest every year. You know, you've always heard that Benedict Arnold was the biggest traitor in American history. He wasn't a traitor at all. He was simply loyal to the king, that's all. The biggest traitor in American history was Howard Taft, because he signed the Federal Reserve Act into law in 1913. Thomas Jefferson, well, all of the founding fathers were very intelligent men. All of them very astute and avid in history. They knew history very well. And Thomas Jefferson was probably the smartest one of them all. And his forte was economics. He understood economics and how they worked. And if he wrote one letter, he wrote 100 on two particular subjects. One, don't ever, ever, ever let an outside entity like the World Bank run our economy. They tried to get in back then, but he wouldn't let them. Don't ever let them do it. We didn't have paper money until after the Civil War. And he knew that eventually we would go to paper money. And he said, when that happens, don't ever let a penny get printed that's not backed by gold or silver. Which brings us to the last question. No, our money is no longer backed by gold or silver. In 1971, I'm sure you understand the basics of how our government works. If you want to pass a law, it gets introduced to the House and the Senate as a bill. There's 526 seats in there. Majority rules. If 2/3 of the House and Senate vote for the bill, it gets turned into a law, and it gets passed, and then it gets set in front of the president, and he either approves it or vetoes it. Well, they have to go through the same thing to amend the Constitution or change the Constitution. And believe it or not, in 1971, over 2/3 of them voted to take us off of the gold standard and just print money. Now, any idiot knows that you can't do that. They all knew. Over 400 of them voted to make that happen. And they all knew that in 50 or 60 years, our country was going to go bankrupt. You know, it was going to take that long because I'm 57 years old. And trust me, in 1975, maybe you didn't make as much, but money was worth money. I mean, our dollar has depreciated about 85% since 1975. We're not in a recession. We're not in a little phase that we're going to get out of and everything's going to be all sunny and fine again like they keep talking about, all the talking heads on television. We're in serious trouble because our money has become worthless. And the reason it's become worthless is simple. It's because it's no longer backed by any type of precious commodity. It's just paper. That $1 trillion they printed, it's just paper. I mean, it still has a little value, but now, I used to tell people that the answer was for us to get together, because united we stand and divided we fall, and get together and stand up and make these people do the right thing, because these politicians, you know, they're in Fat City. They don't want to lose their jobs because we've allowed them to vote themselves, give themselves elaborate, ridiculous paychecks, pensions, retirement plans, health plans. It's absurd if you knew what they got compared to what you get. We allow them to live this plush lifestyle, believing that they're going to look out for our best interests while they're in office. Well, they don't. And, you know, I'm one of the biggest optimists you'll ever meet, and I don't see how this can be fixed without it crumbling and starting over from the bottom. They all talk about fixing it and doing this, and they don't even, how you fix something when you've broken it so badly? I mean, it's simple physics. It doesn't work. But we should still all get together, because if we all got together and stood up to these people, we could get anything done like that. For instance, the first thing we should do is we should make them go through the scrutiny that you and I have to go through to go out and get a job these days. You got to jump through hoops. You got to sing and dance for them. The background checks, the credit checks, the drug tests. I bet you that if we made every politician in America right now do those three things: a background check, a credit check, and a drug test, 85% of them would fail. We need to get those guys out and get somebody in that knows that we mean business. Maybe too late. I don't know. But if there is an answer, that's it. And if you don't believe me about the 4 questions, start asking people. Get ready to have your mind blown, because our country has turned into nothing but a bunch of apathetic, ignorant people that think somebody's going to wave a magic wand and fix everything. We're in serious trouble, folks. It's time to wake up. Have a great day.